Hello and welcome to VistaTalks, interesting discussions with interesting people from all around the world. I'm your host for today, Priscillia Charles, and I'm joined today in Studio 2 by Kelly Bryant. Kelly is Director of WorldStrides. You're very welcome, Kelly.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, our pleasure. So let's move on and get onto the show because I'm sure our audience would like to get to know you and the organization that you're part of. So could you first share a little bit about your background? So I understand I've been doing a bit of research that you studied business administration and international business. Is that correct?
I did, yeah. I attended Florida International University, which is a large school in Miami, Florida, and studied international business there. Got my bachelor's in business administration, of course, which is largely a management degree with an international twist.
Okay, right. Very, very international indeed, and very useful when working, I suppose, with organizations and students all around the world. And so you've got a lot of experience and expertise in marketing from previous roles, I understand. So what drew you to join the education industry, really?
Yeah, that's right. So I did start my career in marketing and events, which I really enjoyed. I even did some project management when I was living and working in Austin, Texas, and was exposed to many facets of business. It was always really rewarding to see projects and campaigns that you put so much time and effort into come to fruition. However, making the jump from financial services to education was actually not intentional. Growing up, my mom was a travel agent, and so I was lucky to explore new places and experience cultures and different ways of life from a really young age.
Yeah.
And that's really what drew me to WorldStrides. I had a desire to connect and continue to learn from growing up in a completely different environment. So this wasn't possible really to incorporate in my previous role. And I was lucky enough to have, WorldStrides enable me to connect those dots and deliver some truly meaningful work.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, I can see this. Yeah, that must be fascinating to grow up with a mother being a travel agent and explore so many different countries and then kind of like I say, translate this into then your career and meet with students or work with organizations and colleges all around the world. That sounds really exciting. And so I want to move on to your current role that you've just mentioned. So with WorldStrides that you joined in 2015, you're now a director of global experiences. So I want to kind of stress the global experiences part. Can you tell us a little bit about the organization first for our audience who wouldn't be familiar with it maybe, and about your role and what do you do? What is it that you do? What does the global experiences mean in your current role?
Absolutely. Yeah, this might be a little bit of a long answer, but WorldStrides, we're a global organization and we've been the leader in educational travel for over 50 years. We started with a history teacher having the passion to take his students to learn about US history in Chicago and Washington, DC, and have really just grown from there. So we partner with educational institutions and students of all ages on academic opportunities, ranging from performing arts programs, competitive sports tournaments, and then the short-term international immersion programs, which is part of the work that I do. So I work in our higher ed custom programs division, where we focus primarily on short-term global immersion programs, which are 1 to 2 weeks long, where students travel and meet with local organizations and participate in cultural tours and activities to truly understand the business climate and cultural norms of these global markets. So the point is really pushing them outside of their comfort zone, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Very useful in life later.
Exactly, yeah. And our team, the Global Experiences team, we work really closely with university faculty and deans to bring their curriculum to life outside of the classroom. So we work typically with a lot of MBA delegations who are looking to generally better understand general business practices from a wide range of industries. However, we also partner with a lot more specific programs on occasion, for instance, engineering for social change in South Africa or supply chain management in Asia, where we find professionals in these fields to meet with the students and share their experience on these particular topics. So in a nutshell, we work with the faculty, ensuring their academic goals are met and that the speakers that they're scheduled to meet with in country complement their course curriculum.
That sounds so interesting. It's fantastic. Kind of makes me think of my own personal career journey and background, I've always loved to travel. I've always loved to learn about other cultures, languages, and here I am. I've moved from France to Ireland to live permanently, and I used to go every summer learn Spanish in Spain through an organization very similar to WorldStrides, and here it is. So I suppose I could say it does have a huge, it can have a huge impact on students on their life later, their professional career, and that's fantastic. So and so can you talk to me a little bit about the current situation? Obviously, pandemic has had a huge hit on our lives on so many levels, and how did WorldStrides adapt to the current context with students? Well, I mean, obviously, going on trips, as you said, but also traveling abroad, for different programs.
Absolutely, yeah, and I will say, I think one of the most exciting parts and rewarding parts of my job is when I do get to travel and see the light bulbs go off, as we're in these meetings, and just see these exchanges that the students are able to have with professionals. So that's been hard as we kind of go into this question to put aside for now, because of course we've been fully virtual. I don't think anyone from my team would ever want to repeat last February or March. We worked feverishly to bring our traveling groups home from around the globe really quickly. And then, of course, once everyone was home and safe, we pivoted to virtual options pretty early on. So we were delivering cultural and academic engagements via Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Google Hangouts, all of those. And so making this switch required us to work really closely with our ground partners as well around the world. We were navigating through, internet and quarantine challenges, figuring out what will work and won't work in a virtual setting. For example, a dance class might be a bit awkward, but we've mastered the art of a virtual wine tasting. So, it's kind of testing those out and seeing what makes the most sense. But yeah, I mean, we're of course trying to keep our eye on the long term and focusing on what the environment will look like once we can have groups traveling again. And we have a team monitoring country conditions and communicating the latest on entry requirements, COVID restrictions, quarantine regulations, which is a large task, as you can imagine. It's a lot of information and changing daily. But ultimately, we and our universities are really eager to get back to travel. So we're really trying to arm them with as many resources as possible to be able to make an informed decision. But in the meantime, our team has been working with our company partners to arrange virtual meetings. We've done virtual panel discussions, consulting projects, and trying to keep our networks open and connect students with these industry experts who are dealing with right now the real-time challenges in their respective fields.
No, yeah, and I'm sure that's very useful to everyone, whether it's students who are currently enrolled or students who will be enrolling, in the future, and that's a really good way of engaging with everyone, and I want to discuss about I want to talk about another area that WorldStrides is involved in is partnership, obviously, with global organizations. So you did mention earlier on that some of the activities are do include trips abroad, to see how other cultures and other businesses around the globe function. And then Vistatec has actually been partnering with WorldStrides for a number of years, and proudly, and meeting with students. So most recently virtually, but beforehand in person. So what would you say that WorldStrides look for in an organization, to partner, or just to, when they're looking to try to, find to schedule a student visit, let's say, coming to Ireland, for instance?
Yeah, no, I love this question. And thank you for asking it. I know Vistatec has been a great partner, and some of the things that I'll share, you've definitely hit all the boxes, which is why we've worked together so well. But of course, a lot of it is driven by our faculty and the course that they're trying to deliver. So I would say, ideas and industries really derive from there. However, some common themes I would say are always, high tech and highly innovative companies. What's the newest on the market. With that, we work with a lot of incubators and accelerators to try and see, what the newest and latest technologies are.
Okay.
Another, large one, and we've seen this kind of trending of requests just from students wanting to meet with and really work for highly impactful organizations. So from a social responsibility perspective, what are they doing to really enrich their communities and those of their employees and their customers, and not just, care about the bottom line. Yeah, but really, most importantly, our leaders and companies who are willing to share and be candid about challenges and new ideas. This is where the real learning takes place, and where I think a lot of our students have the aha moments when a CEO or a director walks into the room and says, "Yes, we tried this plan and it failed, and this is why." Peeling back the curtain a bit and being a little vulnerable really generates those meaningful discussions and new ideas, and opens the door to have that dialogue.
That's fantastic. Yeah, no, I can see how that must be very insightful for students, for a younger person, thinking about what will I do with, with my life, if I still have a few doubts, in which direction to go, and be able to ask these questions in person. And I know that, our CM, or Chief Marketing Officer, Simon Hodgkins, has been meeting with students, for the past few years, and was delighted to be able to, to answer questions and explain, really what are our processes, or, challenges that we faced. And most recently, we, Vistatec Marketing Department, met virtually with two universities, thanks to WorldStrides. So Valencia College in November 2020 and Texas A&M. And most recent with Texas A&M was an MBA class, as you mentioned, that was in January 2021. So the students were, we noticed, very engaged, and it's quite a big group actually. And there were lots of questions, about the organization processes, and a few anecdotes maybe of how to do something or not do something, and the lessons learned, but also about how does the marketing department work. So what would you say, if you had feedback, how beneficial is it for students? You mentioned, to be asking questions, but do you think that virtually, how can we make it even better, for them to engage even virtually? Is there anything else, we can do to make it even more beneficial?
Absolutely, yeah, and yeah, those two meetings were really great, as you mentioned. Texas A&M was just a couple weeks ago, and they were really engaged and got a lot out of their visit. And the Valencia session was actually part of our International Education Week. So they were assigned a different country each day, and had an executive session followed by a cultural tour. So just like a traveling program, understanding the cultural and historical context to the market that you're learning is vital. So we make sure to include, a component for that as well. But yeah, to improve the experience, I would say it's definitely a whole new set of skills, and a different platform to get used to. So really familiarizing yourself with the technology that you're using, and not being afraid to be, vulnerable, and I would say humble if you don't understand something. This is all new to everyone. We were kind of forced into this last year, as is everyone else, and we're all kind of learning together. But these exchanges, albeit virtual right now, they're so important for students to just continue to keep the lines of communication open. I know this last year especially has been kind of hard for students in university and even in high school who are trying to, look towards the future and figure things out. And so I think just keeping the dialogue going and creating these opportunities and then connecting with people over the world when it might be hard to see right now. So yeah, I would say and also including and engaging in conversation. Unlike an in-person meeting, maybe having a slide deck of 50 to 100 slides isn't the best use of the time on Zoom. Maybe we want to do a shorter presentation or a visual aid, and really, have the students just have a discussion. So yeah, limit the content for sure, as far as, what you're speaking at, and generate more of an engaged dialogue. Yeah, and also turn your video on. I know it's hard, and we're in Zoom meetings all day long, but especially if you want to have an engaged discussion, it goes a long way if the person speaking can actually see your faces, even if it is just a head nod in agreement, just to know that the audience is following along.
Absolutely, yeah, no, it's true. It is really important, I think, to be able to kind of, when trying to engage, to see the reaction of the students, and see when we do ask, we try to interact with students and ask them, what do you think that is, and can anyone tell me what do they think is, what was the reason for such and such brand, to make such and such decision. And it is always so interesting to see, students reacting, and giving us their answers. And no, it's always a really good time. We look forward to more students visits, and virtual ones and in person. And speaking of students, so WorldStrides also help them every year find their dream internships all around the world. And Vistatec is one of many organizations, obviously, welcoming students. We always look forward to for a few weeks within the marketing department. So what would you say from past experience that students look for in an internship? Has it changed over the years, or would you say something with the pandemic or not that is quite common?
Yeah, I would say it's been pretty steady over the years. In general, students are looking to really dive deep into their chosen career field. So most of our student applicants have introductory experience in their specific career fields, but maybe they've not necessarily been given the opportunity to work independently or on projects for a specific organization. So our internship programs allow them to do that with the assistance of industry professionals. So largely that's still the case today.
Okay. And do you have any tips for students or global organizations to connect, to make the most of an internship? So we've just published ourselves an article, the top 10 tips for, for your first internship, how to make it a successful one for, your current position as an intern, but also for your future career. So what would you say yourself? Would you have any tips?
Sure. Yeah, I have a couple, and I wouldn't say one is more important than the other. But first of all, it's really important to be clear on expectations. And I say this coming from, a position of being both the intern and the company hiring an intern. Students should have a clear idea of what they're looking to get out of the internship, and the organization should have a clear idea of what they want the intern to accomplish. Communicating these critical pieces at the beginning will allow for a much smoother start and will benefit both parties greatly. We've seen this happen where it might not have been communicated in the beginning, and then it just isn't as great of an experience. And then secondly, I would say, especially when we're talking about global organizations, and this is dear to my heart and the work that I do, is being mindful of the culture and market that you're working in. Some have very different communication styles, as I'm sure you've experienced yourself. Some markets are more individualistic versus collectivistic, and really, changes the way that they communicate and make decisions and how they're motivated. So really taking the time to do some research on whether it's the origin of the company's headquarters and how that culture has permeated through, the organization, or if you're actually moving and working in a whole new, country, that goes a really long way.
100%. Yeah, no, that is very true. Yeah, communication is key to everything, really, and especially if you're going to a different, whether it's a different country, different city, and knowing a different industry, something an industry that's more niche than another one. And 100%, yes, I do agree. And so I want to talk about education a little bit more. So this year, the Think Global Awards 2021 are celebrating education and e-learning, and will be rewarding an individual or an organization in this category. And I know that the organizers are really looking forward to knowing who the winner will be. And speaking of education, International Day of Education was January 24th of this year. So why do you think it is important to celebrate education in general?
Oh, I think it's so important. I mean, this day in particular just highlights the importance of access to education, not only to those of us in the States, but around the world. And I think this past year especially has just highlighted, what happens if that access is taken away for one reason or another. We've had COVID, guidelines and challenges from all corners of the world. And so I think it just puts a magnifying glass on why we do what we do, and why we connect students with leaders around the world and create those opportunities, because there is nothing like sitting in a classroom yourself and hearing that firsthand, or meeting with a nonprofit or organization on the other side of the world, and just having this day to take a moment and reflect and just reaffirm that this is important work, and it's not done, and it's far from done. There's a lot more work to do. But yeah, I think it just brings it to the forefront and reinstates it is important for everybody to have access to education, no matter where they are or what their situation is.
100%. Yeah, it's an ongoing. It's something that should always be celebrated, and we should keep on promoting, and not even promoting it. Encouraging anyone to have access to. And we're talking about the pandemic here. You mentioned COVID and how difficult it must be for, for some students. And I've heard that it can be extremely challenging. And actually, I do really feel for students around the globe at this time, and I know that there's been a lot of struggle economically and psychologically wise for some of them. So do you have any feedback of students who face challenging, and would you have any advice for anyone, currently enrolled in school and maybe, having struggled to study and plan a future post graduation, because it is such a challenging time?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I, reflect back on when I was in university or, preparing to go to university or start my first job. And it's such an exciting time. And so it's so hard, and my heart goes out to all the students who are really trying to navigate through that. But, 2020 also challenged me on a professional and personal level. We all started working from home, some of us completely isolated, and we're tasked with learning new technologies and ways to deliver our programs in a virtual setting, brand new set of processes and challenges. But one thing to keep in mind from a professional perspective as well is that as awful as 2020 was, for many industries, some actually thrived, and other businesses, had opportunities that emerged from the pandemic. So, for example, what I've seen firsthand is that some of our consulting projects have actually derived as a direct result from the pandemic. So some of our students have had the opportunity to work with an organization on, their real-time and relevant challenge right now. So it not only benefits the company in the short term, but also gives the students, experience working with teams in different countries and delivering a final result that they can add to their resume. I think largely this year has taught us a lesson in flexibility and operating in the unknown. I would encourage students to keep their options open and not be afraid of change, and to focus on what they can control. So for me, that's been focusing, on my health, my personal growth, extending my network, and trying to take advantage of most people being stuck in front of their computers at their homes right now. But for students, this might mean fine-tuning your resume or LinkedIn profile, or reading books in your area of study, exploring the new opportunities that might be coming out of the pandemic. And, this might be the first hard lesson in change management, right? Being flexible of what comes your way.
Very true. Okay. And yeah, those 100%. Very much agree. And we talk about the pandemic and with a lot of classes around the world being taught online, and and for many students, how do you see the future of education yourself? Because it really looks like we're heading towards a heavily focused digital education. I know I see the difference myself when I was in school a few years ago, but now it seems like we're moving almost fully online, and in the future it will be just a normal way to teach classes and to attend school.
Absolutely, yeah. And this is a tough one and a really hot topic right now. I think a lot of universities are looking to one another to see what the other's going to do first. But I do think, of course, some virtual aspects of virtual learning are here to stay. We've had a lot of conversations with some of our universities about maintaining a virtual option for those students who might not feel comfortable traveling in the future, but also to offer a more affordable and accessible choice for those students who historically might not have had the means or opportunity to travel in the past. So yeah, whether that means, full virtual programs with academics and cultural activities like we have been doing, or even layering in guest lectures from around the world, within your course, I think these hybrid models are going to be a lot more prevalent going into the next few academic calendar years. But alternatively, I think we might also see the traditional MBA structure change as well. As many of us are working from home and might continue to do so for the foreseeable future, flexibility is going to be key for universities to attract talent. So being able to design your own agenda, attend classes, or have a fully virtual schedule, I think those are the options that students will come to expect and demand from their educational experience.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, sounds about right. And it'll be very interesting to see how that works in the future and for future generations. So Kelly, before we finish this interview, is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience today? What will 2021 look for you?
2021. Well, we're continuing our virtual programming, working spring and summer programs. Like I said, we're trying to get people back to travel. So we're just continuing to monitor, the country conditions. I know we've had a political change here in the States, so seeing how that's going to play out. But yeah, really focusing on that. And, this year has pushed everyone to innovate and think creatively, and will definitely have a lasting impact on many sectors. So I'm excited, what this means for the industry. I think
Yeah.
for a lot of different sectors, it's kind of pushed people to act a little bit faster. Maybe they had plans to, convert to higher technology and just hadn't done so. And now we're forced to. So yeah, I don't know what the future holds, but I'm excited to see what will unfold. So I appreciate you having me on. I think this was a great conversation.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And I'm sure our audience will find it very beneficial and interesting. And for any, students or parents or organization, looking to connect with WorldStrides and, just, be anyone interested, in education and the future of education will find it very interesting. So thank you so much again. And we look forward to continuing our partnership with the WorldStrides.
Thank you. We do as well. This is a lot of fun. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So it's already today's the end of today's show with Kelly Bryant, Director of Global Experiences at WorldStrides. So thank you again, Kelly, and please make sure to tune in again to see or to listen to our next VistaTalks show, where we'll be discussing more interesting topics with interesting people from all around the world.